we are looking at is a very unconscionable, quite frankly, by all accounts, situation existing in our detention centers, where folks are being housed in a situation that cannot be condoned by any stretch of the imagination. Attorney Scoon, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
A pleasant Sunday morning to you. Approximately how many detainees are held in Trinidad and Tobago's detention center, to your knowledge?
I do not know. I suspect that it is more than 100, but I do not know, and the figures are not published.
So those we don't have those figures, which means there's no way we can have a breakdown as to which nationals from where and so on. That would be equally difficult to present.
At this point in time, it will be.
Understood.
But the figures are available, and I suppose if I wanted to right now, I can call my associate, Mr. Kaffer Cambon, from Emancipation Support Committee,
right,
who usually requests the figures from time.
Well, we will do a quick check, and we will probably be able to pull that up. Just to let our listeners know, Attorney Scoon, how long have you been involved in this immigration business? Because you've seen a lot.
I've been for more than 25 years.
More than 25 years, more than enough time. Under TNT's law, who has the power to arrest undocumented foreigners in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, a report can be made to an immigration officer if someone is found to be undocumented. And the immigration officer, anyone can make that report. And if a policeman finds someone that he thinks is undocumented, the policeman can make the report to the chief immigration officer.
The policeman can make the report, but can the policeman arrest the person for being here undocumented?
He ought not to arrest him, according to my understanding of the law, but he can make a report, and then the immigration officer can detain that person pending what is called a special inquiry.
Or clarification as to the person's status.
Yes.
Because that leads to my other question. What does the law say about carrying IDs or a person's right when challenged for immigration documents if they don't have it on them? Are they given a period in order to present it? I mean, what happens? They approach me, they ask me, are you legally here? And I go like, no, I don't have my papers. What happens then?
Well, a person...
No, I don't have my papers with me is what I say.
That is correct.
Yes.
As far as I understand, no one in Trinidad and Tobago is required to have with them an ID card or some form of ID when they go about their business. And that applies to foreigners as well. But a foreigner, there are reporting requirements under the Immigration Act. And a person who is a foreigner must inform the chief immigration officer of his place of residence or if he moves.
Yeah, so that's fine. Forgive me, but I'm still trying to get tied down for me and for the listeners here. So I am walking down with my friend. I am illegal. I'm undocumented, as it were. And the officer approaches me and asks me for my, for whatever reason, asks me for my papers. And I go, am I legally here? I say yes. He does not believe me. He says, well, let me see your papers. I don't have it with me. What happens then? Am I allowed a period of time to go
I would think that is a practice that is happening now. I think it is an illegal practice. Okay, I do not think that a police officer or an immigration officer can accost you on the street and ask you for your papers and arrest you.
Precisely why I'm asking, because that's that's why I'm hearing people saying that is what's happening.
Yes, that is happening. So it has to be the act seems to require action based on a report credibly received by the chief immigration officer that says, I have reason to believe that such and such a person is. Okay. Now, it's a kind of gray area, however, that I suppose if you went to court, a immigration officer probably can come up with reasons why he believed that such and such a person may be a person who is required to give proof of their legitimacy in trying to be.
Yeah, like a prosecutor would say, I can indict a ham sandwich. A police officer can say, I'll find a million reasons why I asked the question.
That's correct.
Yes. All right. So we understand that. But as far as the law is concerned, if I don't have my ID, am I given a certain amount of time to provide? If I don't have identification or papers,
well, the law does not say it because the law does not require you to have your ID. So it does not say.
Immigration attorney takes hold of me, and he says, I have suspicion that you're here illegally. Here is a question. And I'm unable to provide the documentation. Let us just say that they are right. Eventually, I don't have my documentation. What rights are enshrined in the Constitution for access to a lawyer or that national's consular?
Okay, then what happens is that that person is taken down to the immigration division, and there is an intake of that person. At that point in time, the person does have access to a family member, a friend, an attorney at law, telephone calls, the normal process.
This is not an option. The person is by law entitled to this.
They are entitled to this.
Good enough,
yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then if there is reason to detain the person, then the person is by law entitled to a special inquiry to determine his status as soon as possible.
Explain that for me. A special inquiry. They ask me to provide documentation. I don't have it.
Right.
I can show it. I can show my bona fide status here. He says, okay, so, well, I mean, what do you want an inquiry for? I already don't have my papers.
Well, no, your papers mean, the way the Act envisions things, your papers may not be the only factor that determines your legitimacy in Trinidad and Tobago. So, in fact, you may not have papers in Trinidad and Tobago, but your father may be a Trinidadian. You may not have papers in Trinidad and Tobago, but you may be married to a Trinidadian. Mm-hmm. You may not have papers in Trinidad and Tobago, but there could be you could be an asylum seeker. So there must be some process to determine
my link.
What is your status in Trinidad and Tobago and how the immigration department is going to deal with you.
The attorney's voice you're hearing is that of attorney Farid Scoon. He's our guest, immigration business for over 20 years. We're having a discussion with him this morning on the question of the immigration detention centers, but we're trying to understand what happens before we get there. And you are making a point that if a foreign national is married to a Trinidadian, now, I assume he would have had to have papers to get here in the first place, but however, you were saying that he's married to a Trinidadian, and that alone gives him access to a special inquiry to find out his status.
Anyone who is brought in by immigration has the right to a special inquiry. That is the process.
Gotcha.
You cannot. So there can. You see, regardless of what a statute says, the common law of Trinidad and Tobago guards the liberty of the citizen, and the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago guards the liberty of the citizen jealously. So a statute cannot easily displace the liberty of a citizen. So even though a statute says you can detain, then the law will say that detention has to be reasonable, that detention has to be as short as possible, that detention has to have prescribed a process for investigation and release, and so that if there is if there is going to be some process for holding you for longer than a reasonable period, then that process must be according to law.
All right. Information. When we started the conversation, we talked about what's the current capacity in our detention center. The maximum capacity today is 150. In 2014, 131 foreign nationals were held at the facility. Jamaicans making up the largest portion, followed by Guyanese and Africans. Just wanted to bring our listeners abreast of that, so we're clear on that. So we're talking about the rights of the person once you are in there. How long can a person be held for, according to law, before this special inquiry?
No,
inquiry, as it were.
the special inquiry should take place as soon as reasonably possible.
How long does the law allow them not to hold one, not to have one?
I do not know that it has been tested in court, and that is one of the violations of the what I consider to be a violation of practice and procedure of the Immigration Department. But if you judge from other aspects of the law, if a Trinidadian is arrested, then that Trinidadian usually has to see some kind of judicial process within 48 hours. If the special inquiry process under the Immigration Act does not prescribe a time limit for the special inquiry, and except as to say that it should be reasonably, as soon as reasonably practical or something like that.
We are we're on our way to that whole question of how we house and treat with detainees, guys. We're leading up there just to make sure we get we get the entree before we get to the main course. Detainees, once they I'm sorry.
So what is happening now is that persons are being arrested, and their special inquiry process is taking months.
That is the exact reason I pursued that.
And that is an illegal process.
Yes, that's exactly why I pursued that, because I've heard that complaints a lot too. The complaint outside of overcrowding and unsanitary conditions, which we'll get into in a second, but I've heard that these preliminary inquiries, they're taking a very long time, which is denial of fundamental rights, an enshrined right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Detainees, once they are held, waiting this inquiry, they should be after they have had this special inquiry, but once they are held, are they allowed visitation? And by whom and under what conditions are they allowed visits?
They are allowed visitors. The visitors usually bring their food, their families can check them, their friends can check them, their consular officers from their
embassies or
embassies
consulates.
So they are allowed visitation.
All right.
And they are also allowed telephone communication, I think 2 or 3 times a week over telephone.
And if they are denied these things?
Then that would be a breach, fundamental breach of their detention.
I am clear on the breach, but what recourse is there?
Well, then they will have to apply to the court for relief.
Okay. Attorney Scoon is my guest this morning. Farid Scoon, we are talking immigration. Let's speak to the detention center.
Before we go to the detention center, can we speak to an anomaly in the special inquiry process?
Please go ahead.
So you are held, and a special inquiry is supposed to ensue to determine your status. What happens at present, which is contrary to the manual of practice and procedure that is produced by the Immigration Department, so they are not following their own manual of practice and procedure, is that your special inquiry is held before one officer and a recorder. So it's like you are held, and you are, for an offense, you are brought before a magistrate, and the magistrate is questioning you, is prosecuting you, as well as making decision about the outcome of the prosecution. And that is a wrong process. That process needs to be changed. The immigration procedure says that there should be a presenter. Okay, the Immigration Department is supposed to appoint one of its persons to be a presenter, and he presents the case of the Immigration Department. Then you have your attorney at law or your friend or representative, or if you choose to represent yourself, stating what your case is, and then the immigration officer, who is the special inquiry officer, makes a decision. So right now, the process is almost a process where it will be determined one way only, and that is the way that the special inquiry officer presciented that it's going to be determined.
Judge, jury, and
Executioner.
executioner.
That is
Nobody is
correct.
executioner, I would say, however, penalizer.
Yes.
But I understand what you're saying. We are talking about our detention centers. The question comes in, how does Trinidad and Tobago's detention facilities, because up and down the street we have heard how horrible it is there. We who have either been exposed abroad or so on, we know how fervent we are that conditions must be humane, because there are Trinidadians all over the world. We travel, and our people are held in other places, and we make demands of them. How does Trinidad and Tobago's detention facility match up with those others in the Caribbean? I understand Barbados has none, but I mean, wherever there are detention centers in the region, how does our situation match up?
I don't know that there are any detention centers anywhere else in the region, in the Caribbean, and that may mean that ours is better than
By default,
some
yes.
of the other islands, because that may mean in the other islands that you probably are going to go to one of the prisons if you are detained on an immigration violation.
My inquiry for the Barbados situation said to me that what we are looking at is, as soon as they arrive, we arrange to get them back out. Once we find them, we get them back out. But it does not sound practical. And that's the reason I
But
asked
no,
the question.
that does sound practical, because that is what the law of Trinidad and Tobago also provides for. Okay, and you see, the way that we have been talking so far, it's as if the detention is the only recourse after you are held. After you are held without your papers, as you see, right? After you are held undocumented, detention is not the only recourse.
Go ahead and tell me about the others.
So
That's the reason we're here.
You can be released. They can hold you. They can hold you. They can bring you in. They can say, bring your friend, bring some relative, sign a bond, and let this person take care of you. We are going to bond that person and let that person make sure that you come here. And if you violate the conditions of that release, then we will detain you. So it's not that the practice does not seem to be a sound practice to me, that the only recourse that the immigration department has when they find someone undocumented is to detain them.
That's an enshrined flexibility.
It is, in fact, in the law, yes.
All right. So there's a flexibility in the prison. To exercise that flexibility is the prison hearing your case.
And I think, as a matter of fact, the vision of the law, the purpose of the law, really is not to detain. It is to detain as a last choice, not as your first choice. It is to bring you in. It is to process you. It is to deal with you as quickly and efficiently as possible. And if you are found to be recalcitrant, if you are found to be a person who is likely to breach the requirements further, then it is to detain you.
All of this save and except of if you're caught doing something criminal, then it becomes a criminal offense. It's a different matter because the local constabulary takes over in that case.
Yes,
okay, we're clear on that. The question of repatriation is an issue because who pays for it is the question. Because if I remember, and I think it applies, is that if the carrier, in the case of someone who's just arriving, if you arrive here without your necessary documentation, then the carrier is held responsible to pay for that repatriation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Because the carrier has responsibility to ensure that the carrier pays for it if the carrier is in breach of some requirement that it is supposed to follow. But a carrier is not responsible for repatriation if it is that I had my visa to come in, for example.
And you overstayed it or something like that.
No,
different.
and I was rejected at the airport, because that can happen. I can have a visa, and having a visa does not guarantee my acceptance at the port of entry.
It brings you to the port of entry.
Right.
That's
It
what.
brings me
Yes,
to the port of entry to be examined to determine if I can enter.
I appreciate.
There's another, I would say, a malpractice of the immigration department at that point in time. If I come to Trinidad and Tobago and I am rejected, I'm given a rejection order. The rejection order says that I can appeal that order immediately. If I appeal that order immediately, then what happens is that I am taken to a special inquiry officer.
A holding area.
I'm taken to it provides I am taken to a special inquiry officer
Immediately.
as soon as possible. Okay, so they may do it overnight or the day after.
Where am I held? Where am I held in the meantime?
Well, you can be held anywhere. It's at the discretion of the officer.
Okay.
Right? They can say, okay, go to a hotel and stay there. They can tell you stay in the airport. It's up to their judgment.
Okay.
You see?
Okay.
We have to get away from the mindset that everyone who enters into a country is going to, and who faces an immigration problem, is a person who is likely to be a criminal who is going to flee from the authorities' supervision. That is not so at all. And the law does not envisage that also. So the law envisages that if you are rejected, you can appeal your rejection, and a special inquiry officer will then take over your investigation to determine whether he would override or keep the decision of the investigating officer on your inquiry, on your, who inquired of you on your entrance into the country. The problem with this is that you must appeal immediately. It means that in the practice of the immigration department is that if you appeal 2 hours after, that is not forthwith. If you appeal 5 hours after, if you get a telephone call through to your friend or to your attorney or to someone and you get advice 5 hours after, they say, no, you have lost your chance of appealing.
Which means that if I am in fact denied entry, I should have my phone call immediately.
That is, you should, yes.
And if I'm having it immediately and I make this protest within a half hour to an hour, then it should be fine.
They say immediately. That means that they give you the rejection paper.
And they give you the phone.
They don't give you a phone. They give you a rejection paper. Oftentimes, clients say they don't tell them they have a right to appeal.
I see.
You have to read imagine the stress that you are under. Okay, you just paid your $5,000 to come to Trinidad, and you meet the immigration officer. They say, no, we are not letting you in. Here's your rejection order. Sign it, right? The print is very fine, 8-point print, and they say, okay, we're making arrangements to put you on the next flight.
This is a very interesting conversation. Unfortunately, I'm leaning up against the clock here, but let me ask you this. Do we have a body of attorneys like yourself, for instance? I know in the United States, you get yourself in a situation like that, you ask for legal aid, and you pick up the phone, you call somebody from legal aid, they come out, and they look out for you. So let's say somebody's arriving in Trinidad and Tobago, find themselves in that situation, got nobody to call, or don't understand the fine print. Is there a mechanism that can be put up where the immigration officer will now say to the person, you have been rejected, you can make this, you can appeal this immediately. Here is a number for some attorneys who may be able to assist.
And there is none. That does not exist.
Is that something that could be viable here that you think would make some sense here? That should be viable,
and it does not have to be an attorney. There needs to be in my opinion, there needs to be a body of non-attorneys, of para-attorneys, paralegals, or immigration practitioners, immigration consultants, as they call it, and who can assist in this way. Interestingly, the 1 or 2 immigration consultants who have tried to practice in Trinidad and Tobago, one of them, I forget his name, who creates the African Options newspaper, it gets a lot of difficulty from the immigration department when he tries to do his immigration consultant work.
Maybe we should keep more focus on this and have you back another time when we can deal with some other aspects of it, because, like I said, you brought in some poignant variables we did not look at, but I'm glad that you're here and I'm glad that you brought them forward. Just in conclusion here, and this unfortunately has to be my last question because of some of the commitments that will jam up on me, is this one. What we hear about the conditions at the detention center, is that exaggerated?
It is absolutely not. As a matter of fact, you don't have the full picture.
Paint me a picture as best you can in a minute, please, if you can.
A husband of a Trinidadian the Trinidadian who is dead, who has 4 children by that dead deceased wife, and who has been in the immigration department for more than 4 years, while his 4 children are in foster home. A Ghanaian man whose head was busted, right, and who has been refused adequate or any medical care, and who is now deaf in one ear as a result of the beating that he got. A suicide that has taken place, and another in the immigration department, an attempted suicide that has taken place in the immigration department. The person who prevented the attempted suicide, who prevented her from doing it, is punished, and who was married to a Trinidadian, has been so maltreated by the immigration department that she has now left the country. So the stories are indescribable. A Jamaican, okay, who came to Trinidad and whose father is a Trinidadian, who claims his father is a Trinidadian, and in 3 years or never had a special inquiry to determine what his status in Trinidad and Tobago should be. It is an atrocious situation, and the unfortunate thing about it is that the Minister of National Security, the Joint Select Committee, no one wants to take their butts up and walk up to the Immigration Detention Center and take your own look at it.
Well, I'm hoping that by highlighting it this morning, the relevant folks will hear it, and we will keep coming back to this because, as I said, I travel. Many people travel. We all understand. First of all, there's a human side of it that has nothing to do with travel. The humanity of people must be respected, and the law must be respected. That's one. 2, we travel, and many times folks are pulled in by immigration authorities in different countries, particularly the United States. We want to be sure that folks don't undergo there what is alleged here. So there's more than enough reason for us to continue this. Attorney Farid Scoon, thank you for opening our eyes in a couple of areas here, particularly in the alternatives to incarceration, these detention centers, which is very important. And this conversation will continue at a later time. I'm hereby inviting you to come back with us at some point when we can go deeper into this. Hopefully by then we will get some folks from the Ministry of National Security or the Immigration Department to have a conversation with us, or to agree to be on with us at the same time.
I'll be happy to.
I thank you very much. You have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you so much for taking your time to be with us this morning.